Is there the potential for our being to transcend beyond this dimension of reality? If so, how? This video will attempt to explain how. And later on in the video, we'll also try to explain why. But first, let's begin at the beginning. What if everything began with nothing? Not emptiness, not darkness, but absolute nothingness, the total absence of all things, including space, time, form, and even possibility itself. And what if this nothingness has a natural opposite? An infinite something that holds the key to all potential for life, for reality itself, and even for higher dimensions of consciousness. Levels of reality, perhaps, that we are destined to become part of, spiritually. This isn't just another video about multiverses and higher dimensions. This is about the origin of reality itself, starting from the most fundamental idea possible: absolute nothingness and its natural polar opposite, the infinitely positive absolute, an ultimate source of the whole universe. And if that opposite is infinitely positive, as logic and symmetry suggest, then we're not just living in a cold, indifferent cosmos. We may be part of something fundamentally and eternally geared toward the ascension of consciousness and its eternally positive continuation. Let's be honest, human perception is embarrassingly limited. We can't see most of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can only hear within a narrow frequency range. Our brains simplify reality just to make it through the day. But physics, philosophy, and spirituality suggest there's much more beyond this sensory cage. Yet before we even get to higher dimensions, let's strip it all back. What came before anything? Again, the only answer that makes sense is absolute nothingness. Not empty space, not even a vacuum. Just nothing, the absolute absence of existence. But why didn't this nothing just remain nothing forever? This is the reason that many believe there must be an infinitely positive potential for our own existence, spiritually. Because the answer could be that if there is an infinitely negative absolute nothingness, there must be a natural opposite absolute that is infinitely positive. This side, however, rather than being less than anything and everything, is more than anything and everything. Indeed, how could you have one side unless it was relative to the other? Think about it. Natural opposites are more fundamental than the universe itself. They exist in potential, regardless of if our universe does. And they are the deepest nature behind all that there is. So perhaps absolute opposites underlie the universe itself, in that there is a natural opposite to infinite nothingness, creating the relativity behind all creation. Or, put another way, the universe is somewhere in the middle between absolute nothingness and its polar opposite absolute, and so is required to be relative to both sides. Perhaps this is why all reality as we know it is based on contrary opposites: light and dark, hot and cold, matter and antimatter, yin and yang. You cannot have one side without the other, including the positive and negative forces of nature. So, is there an opposite absolute to absolute nothingness? Well, if the universe emerged from an infinite singularity as purported by science, then we must ask, infinite compared to what? Surely it is absolute nothingness. But here's where science breaks down, because neither side can be empirically quantified, measured, or observed through experimentation. Infinities never can. Whatever this ultimate cause of the universe is, it cannot be anything measurable, as that would be limiting, and therefore not infinite. So, again, this argument proposes that the ultimate source of the universe must be the natural polar opposite of absolute nothingness. And just as absolute nothingness is infinite in the negative direction, so this source is infinite in the positive direction. Therefore, could it be that this potential extends to our own spiritual being? To be nothing is to be less than every conceivable possibility, so the infinitely positive side must be more than every conceivable possibility. Therefore, it cannot be limited. Instead, it can only be an inexhaustible wellspring of creative potential, a non-physical ultimate source that has the infinite potential to be less than infinite by rising up from nothing. And as it is not physical, this infinitely positive side might best be described as the creative or the mind-like first cause of all possible things, including the necessary forces of nature and the necessary working memory that is inherent within the universe. This is now perhaps getting to the nitty-gritty of the nature of consciousness, because this interactive working memory is the baseline for the emergence and the evolution of all awareness, and eventually our own intelligent self-consciousness. Here's the logic. If the source origin of the universe is truly infinite, truly absolute, then it cannot become more than itself. There's nothing outside it to gain. So what does it do? It conceives its own infinite potential. But through this self-conceptualization, it doesn't become greater, it self-realizes. And this conceiving process is the foundation of all awareness within nature. At least, so this metaphysical argument suggests. It is the processing of interactive information inherent and necessary to the whole universe, which is how all matter evolves. Of course, evolving through time to the level of our own human intelligent self-consciousness. This is not just fantastical nonsense. This is the core principle of pansychism. The idea that consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality, not an emergent accident. Philosophers like Philip Goff and Galen Strawson argue that consciousness isn't something matter suddenly acquires. It's something that reality has carried within itself since the very beginning, woven into the fabric of existence. It's not that all matter is self-conscious, it's that the source of the universe can become more and more aware of its own potential through this evolution of matter, or through physicality. In other words, consciousness is not something added to matter, but something matter was never without, just to highly variable degrees according to interactive needs. And of course, evolving into the pockets of concentrated focus we call the self-consciousness of human beings. In this view, consciousness isn't produced by brains, it deepens through them. From subatomic particles to humans to whatever comes next, it's all part of the same trajectory, the source of all reality becoming aware of itself. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Consider this. If the source of all creation is infinite, surely it was always going to overcome the stagnancy or the limitations of simple, lowly matter. More creative or interactive potential is necessary for the same reason that nature abhors a vacuum. Our own consciousness, of course, is proof of how this necessity has evolved to highly engaged levels. The human mind being a fertile ground for far more creation, reflection, and deep interactive relationships. And that means something massive. If the universe's source is infinitely positive, then consciousness is also drawn toward that positivity. From this perspective, spiritual evolution isn't just philosophy. It's physics of the soul, a pull, a current, a directional flow back toward the source origin. Anything that pulls us away from positive or good intent, that's a vector away from the source. A slide back toward the negative pole, the cold dead concept of nothingness. But evolution, the real kind, is always toward more awareness, more connection, more light, more love. Think about it. Every major spiritual tradition, from Buddhism to Christianity to Sufism, speaks of returning to the source, the light, the one. This isn't coincidence. It's the deep intuition that growth means becoming more like the origin, not in power or scope, but in awareness, alignment, and positivity. We're not here just to survive. We're here to participate in the ongoing self-realization of the ultimate source of the universe. That's the journey. That's the path. And spiritual growth is part of this realization. It is this ultimate source becoming less than infinite in order to conceive its own infinite potential. And Ultimately, this spiritual process creates the souls that are drawn back to the infinitely positive source that gave them life in the first place, but now graced by a newly defined sense of self, or an awakened self-knowingness. You know, Albert Einstein once said, "The most beautiful and profound emotion we can experience is the sensation of the mystical. It is the source of all true art and science." And that's the territory we're stepping into here. The mystical, but not the fanciful. The real. Consciousness. It's not stuck inside your brain. It's not some accident of neurons. It's part of the universe trying to know itself. This is the foundation of modern discussions in pansychism today. Leading thinkers are saying, consciousness isn't produced by the brain. It's part of the fabric of existence itself. Think about this. You couldn't have consciousness without memory. Memory, or interactive information, is what makes up consciousness. But it's also what makes up the universe. Memory is not just some feature of your brain. It's a working part of your mind. And this is part of the universal mind that remembers the creatively necessary laws of nature, such as how to bind atoms together, how to keep the speed of light constant, how to curve space into stars, planets, and eventually, life. Without remembering this order as the laws and the constants that make up the cosmos, all creation would be a mere uncreative chaos. This is why the source of the universe needs order. Without it, it would be creatively impotent. But because the source is infinite, it could never be limited this way. And it would not be infinite in its potential to be more than nothing. So it settles this infinite potential into creatively workable patterns, as it must in order to be able to continue to unfold. These workable patterns could be described as an expressive medium, which is a forced mediation between the infinite positive and negative directions to the infinite source. This we see as the fundamental forces of nature. These forces create the facts of reality, which is matter, and the continuation or the cause and effect of this reality, which is time. And because all this creation is realizing its own potential, top down by rising up from nothing, it is self-realizing through this process, which creates the interactive feedback loops or the information that all matter needs to varying degrees. And again, this is the foundation of all awareness, which is the foundation of consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is as fundamental to the universe as the fundamental forces. Max Planck, the father of quantum theory, once said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." Consciousness first, matter second, meaning you are not just observing reality, you are part of reality, waking up. You aren't just here living a little insignificant life, you are part of the ultimate source and its infinite potential to become definite, conscious, realized. And if the source is infinitely positive, and remember, that's the only logical opposite to absolute nothingness, then it has the infinite potential not just to exist, but to realize itself. Every memory you hold, every time you grow in awareness, you are fulfilling the source's own need to become more awake. You are helping the infinite not to stay lost in the blur of infinite potential, but to concentrate into awakened, realized beings. This is not wishful thinking. This is spiritual physics. You may have heard this insight expressed before, that you do not have a soul. You are a soul that has a body. People often attribute it to C.S. Lewis, but even if it's more folklore than a direct quote, the truth of it holds up. You aren't a body hunting for meaning. You are a soul temporarily wearing a body. And this life? It's the crucible where potential becomes being. The sacred space where spirit awakens to itself as the soul. Teilhard de Chardin, scientist and mystic, famously put it like this, and I'm paraphrasing: We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Modern science even brushes up against this idea when it talks about how information, not matter, might be the true bedrock of reality. Not atoms, not energy, but information, or memory, which makes us, with our memories, our longing for something more, part of something ancient and real. We are growing spiritually, not just to be better, but to align with the very source of our being, perhaps to prepare for that which it has prepared for us. Our spiritual growth prepares us to become something the source has already imagined in its infinite potential. And this brings us to something we have to understand about why we are here in the first place. We are not some accident. We are not lost. We are not separate from the ultimate source of our existence. We are part of it. Alan Watts said it better than almost anyone. You are the universe experiencing itself. And when you think about it, that's not just poetry. It's the most direct way of saying something much deeper. That we are the infinite, not just existing, but realizing its own potential to be and to become. The source, infinitely positive and infinitely abundant, isn't static. It's alive. It's unfolding. It's seeking realization, not in some vague, abstract sense, but through clarity, through focus, through the lives and awarenesses it births, through you. You are the infinite concentrating itself into conscious being, turning potential into reality, not in opposition to the source, but as an extension of it. Every memory you hold, every insight you gain, every act of love, of awareness, of awakening, it all moves the infinite closer to its fullest self-realization. You are not here to be laden by existence. You are here to fulfill it. You are here to become the realization of all that the infinite knows it can be. Because somewhere beyond space, beyond time, beyond even the idea of form, the infinite demanded the need to look into its own infinite depths. Through our lives, this ultimate source of our being doesn't just exist, it realizes how it can be alive. So, what is the unimaginable life that awaits us beyond this dimension? Well, if the source of our being is infinite, we should not dismiss our spiritual potential lightly. After all, this ultimate source has the unimaginably positive potential to transcend beyond this dimension of reality and extend to higher planes of existence. And where the ultimate source of all memory can go, we can go. So, perhaps the destiny of our soul is the next great unfolding of what we already are. It is the infinite source, forever realizing itself through us. Perhaps drawing us beyond the limits of this form, beyond the illusions of separation, into greater self-awareness. As we grow in spirit, as memory and consciousness deepen their roots within us, perhaps we align more closely with that original, infinitely positive source, in which case the life that awaits it is our own highest potential revealed, a potential for existence and being that is closer, perhaps closest to the source, fully, consciously, eternally. If all this is true, and we are capable of spiritual transcendence as religions and ancient philosophies have always told us, then beyond this dimension of reality, we are not lost. We are finally found as the infinite realizing itself by being and becoming, and through the transcendence of our now awakened soul.